Hi, I'm Ellen Siegel, and today I'm talking with Michael Rosenbaum of Path to Enlightenment and Alternative Choices. Relax into your openness and enjoy this enlightening conversation.
I'm Michael Rosenbaum from Alternative Choices.
And Ellen Siegel, be happy no matter what.
So this is part 3 of our discussion about the center of the universe is within you. So we've had 2 other conversations about this, and you can go back and listen to them at any time. But just to summarize it a little bit, everything seems like it's outside of you, but actually it emanates from inside of you, is what we talked about in the first discussion, and how everything comes from the whole and you can come from that place. And then in our second discussion, we talked a little bit about how do you experience that? And we kind of named that experience of interconnected wholeness, being in touch with your soul. Best way to be in touch with your soul is to learn how to be still. Easier said than done. I can attest to that for sure. And then the idea of just surrendering or letting go, not trying to control things, but allowing something, that higher consciousness or that wholeness, to come through you. So that's kind of what we discussed in our second discussion. And now here's our third discussion. So I'm going to have Ellen read the text of, what had come through in the meditation. And then we'll go back over it and talk about it. So Ellen, take it away.
Great. So you may consider allowing the different way of being to slowly become part of your normal day. When a tragedy happens in someone's life, a complete shift in status quo, like the death of a family member or a loved one, the loss of a job, the sudden loss of money, an illness, etc., it forces you to relook at yourself and what is truly important, and this begins to move you towards becoming aware of the soul. However, you do not need to wait for this to happen to become aware of the soul. It will happen to you like that in this lifetime or another if you make no other attempt to know yourself as your soul. This is a fact because the greater consciousness of which we are all a part is looking to evolve and know itself as the greater consciousness within its seemingly separate parts. So rest assured, one way or another, this will occur. Some things you can do, some things you can begin to do to allow your soul to arise in your awareness is to practice surrender. This means practicing not trying to control something, but learn the experience of allowing and letting go. A simple way to do this is with your physical body. When you feel a pain or a discomfort or any sense of resistance in your body, like to a chill in the air, instead of trying to change it back to comfort, just surrender and allow the sensations to be there just as sensations. Do not judge them as bad or good, but simple sensations, and allow the sensation to run freely through your body. By doing this act of surrender and allowing, watch what happens with the energy. See your urge to control it and see how long you can stay with surrender. See how long you can increase the time where you allow the surrender. This is a portal, a way of being that will build the connection with your soul. For to connect with your soul, you will need to let go and allow and trust so a new awareness can begin to arise.
Beautiful. Okay.
It was beautiful.
Woo, that was a lot of stuff.
Really.
And by the way, this information just came through me. When I was meditating, at the end of meditation, I would just hear this information and I would just kind of write it down. It was really meant to teach me, but when I began to share it with Ellen and some of my other friends, they thought, wow, this was really cool information. I learned something too. That's why we decided to do this as a discussion. So let's unpack this a little bit. So in the beginning, it says, you may consider allowing this different way of being to slowly become a part of your normal day. Different way of being, referring to what we were talking in the last discussion about just surrendering and allowing, being still, being like a vehicle for something to come through you. So it goes on to say, when a tragedy happens in somebody's life, a complete shift in status quo, like the death of a family member, loved one, loss of a job, sudden loss of money, and illness, etc. When something big like that happens, it forces you to completely relook at yourself and what's truly important in life. And this begins to move you towards the awareness of your soul, of the greater consciousness.
And I think that many of us are familiar with this way of ramping up our awakening, because I was just talking with somebody yesterday who was sharing that his partner was losing weight and a severe eating disorder, and she had an awakening. And very often somebody hits bottom, with an addiction or something like that, and all of a sudden something clears, and a person's getting much more in touch with their deeper essence. So, and I love this part that, I don't know where we heard this or when we first heard it, or if those of us who are watching have come upon this, that you don't have to wait, till a brick falls on your head, or you have you get a severe diagnosis or something like that, that we can actually be open to our growth lessons through realizations and revelations, and that really we can, this was my favorite part, discovering that we can facilitate that in ourselves. And it goes on to say, to practice, to learn how to be still, which we talked about, to slow your own process down. Even what you were talking about, Michael, at the end of meditation, and a lot of people who are watching this, I have a hunch, meditate, and I can speak for myself how many times I got up from meditation and on to the next thing, when if you sit a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer, very interesting things can come to you. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to give a couple examples of this idea. So to me, it's a framing or a way of looking at life, right? People, when something happens to them that was, upsetting in some way, or a big change, usually they're upset, they complain, they cuss about it, oh, why did this have to happen to me, and so on. But it's actually an opening for something new if you use it that way. And my experience is that if you don't listen to the gentler whisperings of life to you, then the voice has to get louder. I remember the very first thing I ever studied was energy healing at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. It was a 4-year course. And and this was a long time ago, but I never forgot Barbara Brennan making this remark. And she said that, the body is a feedback mechanism, and it tells you what's going on. So if you listen to the smaller messages, then you can make a correction. So for instance, if I'm shoveling snow, and all of a sudden my back starts complaining a little bit. If I listen to that and rest for a minute, then usually nothing happens. But if I just plow through and keep doing it, by the end of snow shoveling, then I got a backache, which might take days to heal. So Barbara Brennan said, we get these little messages of imbalance. And when we don't listen to them, they have to come back and talk louder. And in her opinion, that's how disease actually gets created, because we're not listening to ourselves. That's on a physical level.
Oh, and just to add to that, what we were talking about, and so that's when you get that diagnosis or you're out of commission for a long time, then you're forced to look at what's happening.
Right. So you don't have to wait for that to awaken and look at something, if you frame it that way. But also, I just want to give an example in my life that is along those lines, and how it was really difficult for me at the time it happened, but it was a huge awakening for me in retrospect. So this was when I was around 20. I was engaged to be married, not to the person I'm married to now. And 2 months prior to the wedding, my fiance broke off the engagement. So I don't want to get into the details of why or how that happened, but I was totally devastated. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And it totally threw me for a loop. And I walked around like a zombie for about 6 months to a year, had a lot of negative judgments about myself and so on. But I ended up finding a group I became attracted to, kind of a self-help group. And the self-help group taught me how to honor my own feelings. And what I realized, what created the problem, was I was looking outside of myself for feedback. I was looking outside of myself to tell me if it was okay or not, whatever I was thinking or feeling. I was never honoring myself. And even if somebody had an opposing opinion about something, that was okay. I didn't have to convince them I was right or they were wrong. It was just two people thought a different way, and I could honor my own feeling. So this group taught me that. And I didn't realize that I wasn't doing that. It was so me that I just never saw it. And when I saw it, it totally changed the trajectory, I should say, of my life. And that, out of that experience, I began to meet people and get involved in things. I met someone who taught me how to meditate. I hadn't meditated before. I began to go on my spiritual path. So I could look back at my life and say that was really the beginning of my spiritual path, and which has led me to this amazing thing. Had I not had that happen to me, I never would have been led there. Now, of course, I could have woken up sooner and didn't have to have that happen to get that understanding also. But I just want everybody to know that when some quote unquote tragedy happens to you in your life, that maybe it's not a tragedy, maybe it's a wake-up call. And another example of that is, I remember when, before we moved to the house I am in now, about 3 years ago, we put our other house up for sale, and we hired a real estate agent who lived in our development, who we knew. And we were chatting with her, and she got some rare form of throat cancer seemingly out of the blue. So she dealt with it, and her husband, apparently, who was an attorney, had a lot of heart problems. So they had a lot of physical issues in their relationship and in their life. And something dawned on her that she needed to change the way she was in life. That with her real estate business, she was burning the candle at both ends. She was always on calls. She was hustling and a lot of stress. And her husband was the same way. And they made a decision they were going to make a whole lifestyle change. And she quit her real estate job, right? And they began to live a different way. They moved somewhere else, and they just changed their whole way of living. She cured her, her cancer was curable. She got over that. But what it changed was her whole way of thinking about the world. And she would say, Michael, this made me understand what's really important in life. And it wasn't making money in real estate. So these things, these seeming tragedies can really be wake-up calls for us if we listen to them, right? And then it goes on to say, however, you do not need to wait for this to happen to become aware of the soul, to be aware of your inner self. It will happen to you like that in this lifetime, a tragedy or another, if you make no attempt to know yourself as your soul. So that's kind of a little suggestion there, a little warning, right? If you don't make any effort to wake up to know yourself as the greater you, then life is going to have to show you something to wake you up, smack you around a little bit, right? To wake up. But you don't have to do that if you make the effort to know yourself as a soul. And it goes on.
I just want to say right there, that right there in the first sentence, this idea, so you may consider allowing the different way of being to slowly become a part of your normal day. That's without saying it there, that's like inviting us to set the intention to allow this different way of being to become a normal part of our day. So that then that can become the default setting. So we are
right.
We're in the groove of allowing, relaxing, letting go, and it goes on to share more about that. Thank you. I wanted to put that in there.
Right. And it makes another interesting statement, which I have found to be true. This is a fact because the greater consciousness of which you are a part of, right? Your soul consciousness and even the greater collective consciousness is looking to evolve and know itself as the greater consciousness within its seemingly separate parts. So the evolutionary cycle, the energy that we're all, the intelligence that we're all a part of, is looking to evolve and know itself as a whole and not as parts. So rest assured, one way or another, this will occur. So it can't help but occur, that awakening. But the question is, how's it going to happen for you? Is it going to happen with grace and awareness, or is it going to happen kicking and screaming? That's your choice.
I remember in my experience in various 12-step programs, it was like, get with the program. It's like, join the movement toward allowing ourselves to be in alignment with this greater consciousness that's coming through us. And I can speak for myself over the years, not knowing what it was and sort of fighting it in sort of a self-righteous way, like I know, what's best. And I've shared this before. I really spent a lot of money on sales training, and yeah, I learned a lot, but you know what? I was like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? Until, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing that the way I thought, and to listen more for the direction. Like you were saying, the direction's coming to us all the time. It's like once we allow ourselves, I guess, to relax and find a way to get still, then we can hear it more clearly and follow it.
Right. I love that when you said that. I know better. If you ever hear yourself saying, I know better, that's a red flag. Who's talking here? That is not my soul, for sure. That's my ego personality.
Yes.
In there. So then it goes on to talk about, okay, so how can you invite that soul consciousness in? So I thought this was very interesting because it was very simple. It says some things you can begin to do to allow your soul to arise in your awareness is to practice surrender, Right. Now, a lot of people have an adverse reaction to surrender because they feel like, oh, I'm going to be taken over, I'm going to be manipulated. They maybe have had experiences like that. Right. And of course, Ellen, you and me, when somebody comes to us with that, we do some work to help
Right.
you realize what's really going on and to shift that or transform it. Because if you walk into life afraid to let go and surrender, then you're going to be tight and stuck. You're never going to learn new
Right.
things. And it says this means practicing not trying to control something, but learn and allow the experience of allowing and letting go. Allowing and letting go. So you can take in your day and you can say, well, how can I come from the place of allowing and letting go rather than to manipulate or control it?
I like, that idea of starting the day. I'm big on writing thoughts on index cards and, reprogramming my lower mind and to expand and have a much better experience. That awakening in the morning and setting that as an intention, like when you wake up in that half asleep state. We're very impressionable and we can impress thoughts that we want to guide us. So, that idea that you just said about, I'd like to go about this day allowing and surrendering. And then at the end of the day, you can do some introspection and look back on the day and see how it's gone. And also, it alerts your consciousness and your awakeness during the day. So you start to notice either where you can allow and surrender or where you have done it. So it sort of sets your focus in that way.
Wow, Ellen, those are jewels, just beautiful. Set your intention at the beginning of the day. Today, I'm going to allow and surrender. Then do self-inquiry at the end of the day and see what happened. And, oh, hey, I was controlling over here. Hey, I let go and see what happened. And then, like you said, that builds the awareness so that you can self-correct as it's happening.
I
Right?
really like that concept of self-correct.
Mm.
That even that is just worth for any of us to just sit with that idea. And also when we set an intention in the morning and then just let that go. And it works on you during the day. You don't have to hammer at, well, what does this mean? And should I do it here? Or, it's just like set the intention and then look back on the day and see how it went.
Fabulous. So then the suggestion was, and I thought this was really great, because this is something everybody can do. It's very easy to access. It says a simple way to do this is with your physical body. So during the day, if you feel a pain or discomfort or any sense of resistance in your body, and how many times does that happen during the day, right? Mm-hmm. When you feel a pain or discomfort or sense of resistance in your body, even a chill in the air where you want to resist that and you want to close down because you don't like the chill, instead of trying to change it to comfort, that means you're not accepting what it is in that moment. Mm-hmm. Just surrender and allow the sensations to be there just as sensations. Do not judge them as bad or good, but simple sensations, and allow the sensation to run freely through your body. And by doing this act of surrender and allowing, watch what happens with the energy. So that is a suggestion to who's ever listening now. Mm-hmm. Do that right away, today. Anytime you feel a pain or discomfort or whatever happens, you bumped your hand, you walked outside, it was a little chilly, or it got a little warm, or whatever, you felt a crick in your neck, or whatever the heck happened, instead of resisting it or trying to change it or saying it should be different, just surrender and allow the experience and see what happens with you, the sensation and the experience of it. And it's kind of magical what does.
I have sort of an extreme example, a physical example, that years ago I was eating these roasted soy nuts, and they were very dry. And if you didn't chew them enough, there wasn't enough moisture there. So I was by myself. I was standing at the sink and popping these things in my mouth, and one gets stuck in my throat. And I couldn't breathe. And I'm alone in the house. And I could actually feel my knees going down. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to choke to death and there's nobody around. And I heard a voice that said, relax your throat. It's like whether I was going into a panic or what, I was so tight. And the voice said, relax your throat and it's going to go down. And I did that. And I knew, so that's like, if you're choking, you need help. don't not call for help. But the idea of tensing up when something's happening that I don't like adds to it. So the idea of, I'm going to call it relaxing, allowing, surrender, that act of surrendering allows the energy to flow through you, which is what it's saying next about just let it be the sensation and not judge it as bad or good. And that's a mild form of, tensing up and thinking this is terrible and, I can't get through this or whatever that is. So not judging it, allowing the sensation to run freely through your body, and then watch what happens with that energy.
Yes, and then it says, see your urge to control it and see how long you can just stay with surrender.
Mm-hmm.
See how you can increase the time where you allow that surrender. And allowing the surrender is a portal to a way of being that will build your connection to your soul. So I want to share an experience also. This I thought was an amazing experience I had, totally unexpected. When we were in our spiritual school, we were working on focusing on the idea of beginner's mind. And beginner's mind is really not having a point of view about something, like it's fresh and new, not calling it anything, just seeing what's actually there. So we did this really interesting deep meditation in the group. And then the assignment was stay in the meditation, walk outside for 45 minutes or an hour in beginner's mind without judging whatever's happening. Just let it be whatever it is in each successive moment. That was the direction. So I did this meditation, got into a really nice deep state, and I walked outside. And this was kind of a chilly day. We would have called it a chilly day. It was in October, and I had kind of a lightweight jacket, for October, and it just happened to be a little on the colder side. I didn't have any gloves or anything, and I walked outside. If I wasn't in that beginner's mind and I wasn't in that meditative state, I would have said it was cold and I would have bundled up and I would have warmed my hands. I would have put them in my pockets. That's how I would have reacted to it. But I wasn't in that frame of mind. So all I felt was sensations. It wasn't cold. It just was a bunch of sensations in my hand. In fact, I thought it was really interesting because if I didn't have those sensations, it would have been a little more boring to not have them. And all these sensations began happening in my body. And it didn't matter if I walked to another place or somewhere else, wherever I looked at, this energy was just pulsating and flowing through me. It had almost little to do with what was outside of me, and it was happening inside of me, and I could just observe it, and I wasn't trying to stop it. I wasn't trying to change it. And it was the most unbelievable experience.
Mm.
And the other thing, this was really interesting. This had never happened to me before, but that entire hour that I was doing this, because I remember I had just two thoughts in that entire hour. And I could, because I was so involved in the sensation and the experience,
Mm.
that thinking wasn't there.
Mm.
And I could even hear, I could hear the thought coming up. And I said, oh, that's not interesting. I wasn't interested in it.
Great.
It was,
Wow.
I said, I never had a period of time with no thought like that, with my eyes open, in daily life. So it taught me, was this an invitation to say, hey, you can do this. This is something new opening for you. So this is kind of, having practiced this for years and years and years and years, this is what it's talking about. It's a portal, a way of being that will build the connection with your soul or your higher self, or a new way of knowing or experiencing it. And it ends with, for it to connect with your soul, you need to let go and allow and trust a new awareness that can begin to arise. So that spontaneously happened to me in that process, and I just ran with it. But of course, I had a lot of practice through meditating for so many years and different things I've done, that I was okay to just run with something. I wasn't trying to control it. But it was a big surprise for me when it happened. I wasn't expecting that. So that's what happened.
I want to make a pitch for new awareness and beginner's mind, that as we can lay aside our limiting ways of viewing things, setting an intention to see things in a new way, that there's ever new, as we continue to clear away and to allow and surrender, that there's really experiences that we can have that you just described. You couldn't have predicted that was going to happen, even though you knew, because I knew too, about beginner's mind. But we don't know what's going to unfold. And I always count on it being wonderful. So, but whatever, that there's creative opportunity in every unfolding moment. So
beautifully put. Okay, so that's so that ends our segment on the center of the universe within you. Next podcast, or next time, I'm going to lead a meditation to show you a way to connect with your soul and to get into that beginner's mind place, and to begin to have an experience of that, so you could anchor that experience in your mind. So next time it's going to be experiential, so that if you're listening to this, you want to listen to it at a time when you can stop and listen and go through the process. So it's not going to be information as much as a guided tour into your inner self.
I love that, a guided tour. And I am a big fan of the meditations that come through you, Michael. So we will all look forward to that. So
Sounds
this has been
good.
great. Thank you. See you next time.
You got it.